You're listening to Heroes in the Moment.
What's up, heroes? I'm Michael.
And I'm Nathan.
And today we're giving a movie review for Blue Beetle.
Blue Beetle.
It's been a while since we've done a movie review. I love some good movie review and getting in there and just breaking it down.
Yeah, breaking it down, ripping it apart, building
absolutely,
it up.
building, whatever it
just
needs.
depends on what the movie is.
It absolutely depends on what the movie needs and is and how it goes. But we got Blue Beetle. So intro, initial reactions. What do you think, Nathan?
Listen, man, I think it was exactly what we thought it was going to be. You know, like I was really not surprised going in and watching this movie.
Yeah.
I did not have high hopes. Pretty much everything I assumed pretty much came to be true, to be honest.
I agree. I think it was pretty much how we expected it to go. And we'll talk about that when we get into some of the pros and cons elements of this particular podcast. But yeah, it was definitely exactly what we said. It was a repeat of what we've seen before.
Yeah.
Nothing new. And
Nothing new.
It was just
borrowed every superhero trope in the book.
absolutely did. And just was not particularly gravitating in what it was trying to accomplish.
At all, I feel like.
Which it had some good qualities, and we'll talk about that when we get to pros and things like that.
Sure.
But it has some difficult things to talk about that. But we'll get into it. We'll break it down for you guys. We'll definitely do that for you and go for it. But first off, we have to say a great thank you to Blue Beetle first, because and this already raised Blue Beetle up like a bunch of points on a rating out of 10 because Blue Beetle shouted us out, our podcast Heroes in the Moment, in the movie.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Blue Beetle. Thank you to DC, James Gunn, Peter Safran. We just thank you so much.
Listen, if y'all don't know what Michael's talking about, there's a scene where his sister's talking to him. She's like, "What do you think you are, a hero in the moment?" And we turn to each other and we're like, that's us.
That's our name.
We're the heroes in the moment.
We made it.
Clearly they've been listening to our podcast.
They know what's up. They've been listening. They've been doing it. And we're going to give Blue Beetle a few extra points for shouting us out.
Of course, yeah.
And we just got to say thank you.
It's a 9 out of 10.
We will be expecting our royalty very soon. All right. So
crazy.
now we're going to go into characters. And then after the characters, we'll go into our pros and our cons. We'll talk about the end credit scene. And then we'll rate it out of 10. So to start out with the characters, we got to start with the main star, Jaime Reyes, the Blue Beetle, played by
Xolo Maridueña or something
Xolo
like that.
Maridueña. Okay,
something
so
like that.
We finally kind of learned his name a little
something
bit.
like that.
It's not
It's at least
perfect,
Xolo, yeah.
but Xolo, we know. Miguel from Cobra Kai and all these stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know me and you might disagree on this point, but for me, he was the highlight of this movie for me. I personally really liked Jaime in this movie. I particularly think they did a good job with portraying him, how he is in the comics, how he is in the animated shows and all this. I feel like they did a particularly good job showing Blue Beetle, showcasing Jaime and who he is. And I think Xolo actually did a really good job showcasing who Blue Beetle is.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said there. I do think they did a good job showing who he was and his look, his outfit, everything. I'm not a big fan of Zolo's acting chops, to be honest. I know mostly just on Cobra Kai, and I'm not a huge fan of that after watching, I think, like probably 3 seasons. But to me, he didn't really stand out. I think he was just kind of middle of the pack, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I get that too, but I personally really liked him, and I think most people were like, okay, this is really cool to see Blue Beetle finally on screen, but also to see, like, you know, Xolo do a good job portraying Blue Beetle, that a lot of people really like the character Blue Beetle, but the movie did not build up and give enough for that to be kind of remembered. That's one thing that I had against it. So for Jaime Reyes, I mean, he did a good job, you know, showcased, you know, how he got his abilities, how he got the scarab attached to him. And that was cool. And that was great to see how that happened in that
Amazing
situation.
Spider-Man.
It was very amazing Spider-Man. That's the con there.
I leaned over. I was like, bro, this is Amazing Spider-Man.
It's a lot
He's going
like
to go
Amazing
into the
Spider-Man.
building and he's going to come out with the freaking power.
And then it translates to that. It's a lot like Ant-Man as well. Bug-themed suit. Gravitating towards him and using it and all this stuff, a lot like that. And then also similar thing of showcasing the powers, right? When Ant-Man shrunk down for the first time, he was going through the drains and falling into ants and all this stuff was crazy going on. With Blue Beetle, he got his powers. He's flying through space, flying through all this stuff and all these different things like that, which I thought they did a good job there. It just was a repeat of what we've seen before. I think that the execution, the CGI of the suit was incredible.
Yeah, it looks great.
It looks fantastic, comic accurate, and the use of it and how it flew around, all that stuff. That scene in particular is probably my favorite scene from the movie is when he got his powers in the Scarab.
Yeah, and he goes up into the orbit.
Yes. I enjoyed that
cool.
scene. I think that scene was particularly well done. But with the other elements of superhero movies, like we just compared, there's 2 right there, and there's more that we're going to talk about here later.
Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man, Ant-Man.
I
see
feel a
that.
lot of venom in it too.
There
the
is
whole,
a lot of venom.
The relationship,
Right.
the symbiotic thing.
relationship there.
Yeah.
A lot of venom, and then there's even more we'll talk about when we get to some cons and things like that. But overall, I think Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes was a pretty solid part of the movie. All right, next up, we got to talk about the next character being Jenny Cord. What do we think?
Who is she again?
She was the girl. She was
the girl?
love interest.
Honestly, dude, I thought she was boring. I didn't.
She wasn't very gravitating. Yeah, I agree.
mean, no, she wasn't. I mean, and like I said, their relationship, like it
forced.
it felt
It
very
didn't
forced.
feel real.
No,
That was the problem.
it didn't. It felt like everything was going almost too perfect.
Yes.
It didn't feel like they had enough conflicts kind of in their relationship.
It felt like they like just forced it just because she's the
Yeah.
original Blue Beetle's daughter, and so
She has to get with the
has to
guy.
get with Blue Beetle. She has to get with the guy,
Yeah.
and all of this
Kiss at
stuff.
the end of the movie.
Honestly, I think it would have been more realistic and better if she just was a casual business associate and more like a friend than a love interest. And if they wanted to build that story in a later movie or whatever, that might have worked better
Yeah.
than this one and forcing it here because it was very forced.
No, I agree. And like I said, I mean, in every movie, you don't have to have a love story that works out.
not at all.
Like I think of Barbie, dude. Like, like they didn't force her and Ken together. Like she
true.
was fine, and
That's
I
one
really
of my
liked
cons
that.
for Barbie, though.
Really?
I
No,
think
but
Barbie
no-
and Ken, man.
No, but I liked it, man, because it taught Ken that he needed to find out who he was.
Knuff.
Because exactly. His whole identity was based on Barbie, and now he's finding out who he is.
Sublime.
Sublime. But it just, like I said, man, it felt forced. She's a good actress, but
Yeah.
she just didn't stand out in my
I
opinion.
liked Jenny. I think you're right. She didn't stand out. She's kind of a boring character, but at the same time, I didn't have any I didn't hate her in it. She
Yeah,
made
I
sense.
didn't hate her either,
Her role
yeah.
made sense in the movie. It just the love interest part did not. So next up, we got to talk about another, I think, highlight in the movie. I think these are the Jaime for me, and then this character, the only two highlighted characters that I
Yeah.
got to say that really I liked, and that being George Lopez's character Rudy.
Yeah, he was one of the best parts.
He was
dude.
great.
He's
I
wearing
can't
a
even say
rat
it.
tail the whole time. Conspiracy theorist.
Dude, Batman is a fascist.
Batman is a fascist.
It was hilarious.
Dude can build
The
everything.
taco truck, man.
Dude can fly the bug, plane,
Bug.
whatever. Bug. That's what you got? No, I do this. I'm coming out as, calling some reinforcements.
just bug.
Bug. That's so dumb, dude. I would have
man.
been screaming for help. Bug.
Bug. I'll never let that go. All right, but Rudy, yeah, I completely agree. One of the best characters in the movie, probably second best to Jaime, and
Yeah.
he's just so funny.
Hilarious, man.
So funny. I mean, and his comedy wasn't even stupid. It was actually genuinely funny.
Yeah, it
and I was
was.
laughing every time he was on screen. Man.
Yeah.
And I loved his screen time. The fact that he probably had the most screen time out of the whole.
He got a ton of screen time.
Reyes family. It was great, and him being a whole mentor and that kind of thing, and helping Jaime, with the Blue Beetle stuff. That was
Yeah.
really cool. Nothing negative to say about
Yeah,
Rudy.
I don't either, man. I loved him.
He was great. I just think it was just funny when he was riding in with it was hilarious. Love that guy. All right, next up we got to talk about a character. I'm not sure if I can pronounce his name right, but it's Jaime's sister Milagro. Is that right?
I don't know.
I'm not positive, but Jaime's sister.
Honestly, dude, I liked her better than I liked Jaime.
Really?
I thought she was a great actress. I thought she just felt natural, and I do think she stood out alongside George Lopez in that family dynamic.
I think
I really liked her.
I think she's definitely a great actress. I think she's definitely got a potential for future roles and things like that. But I particularly wasn't gravitated towards the character. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I mean, I liked that she was different in the fact that she was very monotone, very okay, you deliver good news and
Yeah.
it's bad and all that stuff. That was cool and delivering that. But I feel like she had way too much screen time in my opinion. I feel like
Yeah, she did have a lot.
she was not really what I wanted to see. I wanted to see more of Jaime and his role instead of the more familial aspects that we got, which some of it was
Yeah.
not bad. The whole Rudy thing was good, but I feel like
Then
with
again,
her,
yeah,
it wasn't as great.
But I think, like I said, I do think that's one of the things that's wrong. They put a big emphasis on the family.
They did.
In the third act when they all stormed the thing. It's
They did. And
what? Why is
that's
Mom
also,
there?
I mean, it's a repeat of Shazam, Fury of the Gods, right? A
Yeah.
lot of elements of Shazam, Fury of the Gods was right there with the familial aspect and
Yeah.
putting a lot of emphasis
Bring
on
the
family,
family in to
and
fight.
Don Toretto and all.
Dom Toretto.
And
It's
all
all
of this
about
stuff.
family.
And then also I get elements of Miss Marvel as well because she was very familial as well.
Yeah.
And that's what that shows. So again, there's two more we just listed. We
Yeah.
got Venom, we got Amazing Spider-Man, we got Ant-Man, we got Miss Marvel, we got Shazam, Fury of the
Shazam,
Gods. I mean,
yeah.
the list keeps going and we'll talk about some more in a little bit. But for me, Milagro did not really add anything potentially. I think the first two acts was great, but when she got to the third act, it just
Oh no,
was
I
unnecessary.
completely agree, dude. She's just punching dudes in the hallway.
Did not make sense.
It's like,
Not that.
what is going
But
on
we'll get to
here?
that, too.
What?
All right, next up, we got a character that
Oh, man,
I think we both cannot stand.
It's about to be rough.
And I think we're going to spend quite a bit of time here because we got a lot to say. That being Victoria Cord.
The villain, bro.
I think it's quite possibly one of the worst villains I've ever seen.
I was about to say the same thing, dude. I can't remember seeing a villain just as her problem is she's just boring.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't a threat. She was
Not at
uninteresting. She was boring. She didn't do a good job with the lines she had.
No.
Like I said, she presented no real threat. And every time she was on screen, I was just hoping she'd get off.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Like, really.
I completely agree. Like, she was not the best actress either, so that didn't help. And then on top of that, her role in this movie was so, it was a Darren Cross role, like in Ant-Man.
Man, yeah.
But it wasn't as well done. It
No,
wasn't
it
well
wasn't.
done at all. Like, she's honestly, I can't even think of any other superhero movie where I think she's genuinely the worst villain I've ever had in a superhero
She's
movie.
terrible.
She's a bad villain.
I do think the Marvels will be in that contention.
Might be in that contenders, but we'll see. But like,
she was terrible.
She's a bad villain, and there's no compelling arc.
Yeah, there's no compelling
She has
arc.
the same story throughout the entire movie, and nothing changes about it. She doesn't have a lot of screen time, which was good. But at the same time, when you have a villain, you should expect more screen time from a villain capacity.
And she was an evil for evil's sake villain, you know. But she didn't do a good job at it. You know, like with Joker, he's just evil, right? And you're attracted to that because they're interesting, they're unique.
Mm-hmm.
However, she's not. She's just like just a corporate body.
She's just a corporate
and
business
her whole motive was like she was just mad that she got passed over for the company because she was a woman.
I mean, sure, it could be better explained, and they could have executed that better, but they didn't.
Yeah, they had no story with
They had no story.
They had like newspaper
Right?
like clippings, and that was it.
That was it, and there's no real character development for her at all.
No.
And she was just this one straight face, and then she was like, you didn't get the vibe that she was just willing to kill these much about people. Like, you don't get that vibe. I get the vibe that, okay, she just wants a lot of money. She wants power.
Yeah.
I don't get the vibe that she's going to go kill all these people.
And you
take
tell me
children
she's
from their
a
homes.
murdering like psychopath. It doesn't work.
It did not fit. Did not
know?
make sense. Was not executed right.
Yeah, I agree.
Horrible villain. And that
Horrible.
brought the movie down very much.
Yeah, dude.
Because if the villain was better and had a better capacity, maybe if they focused more on the next character we're going to talk about, it would have been a lot better.
Yeah.
But they did not. And they focused on Victoria, and she was a horrible villain. But being that said, we got to talk about this next character who is kind of the secondary antagonist of this film, being Conrad Serafax, otherwise known as the Indestructible Man. What do you think?
Dude, I liked him a lot, to be honest.
I liked him.
Throughout the movie, you're kind of indifferent. You definitely like him better because you're comparing him to his boss.
Yeah.
But at the end, when you see his backstory, it just kind of makes everything click. I'm not saying it excuses it, but he definitely could have been the main villain. Yeah,
He could have been. He absolutely could have been. And they had a good storyline for him that was condensed into a 30-second flashback.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
like his village got bombed.
Yes,
he was
expand
forced
your
to become
villain.
a soldier.
We want to see more of this villain. Victoria Cord could have been a good secondary villain that he killed and then progressed, and he could have been the main villain, and it would have been better, I think. But even then, they showed him in the 30 seconds before his death scene, right?
Yeah,
They
and that
showed
was
his
the only
backstory.
story you saw,
And that was it.
like they did very poorly.
They did it very, very badly.
Plus, and it doesn't help too that he's using has the same exact powers
It does.
as
And
Blue Beetle.
in the comics, I was
know?
reading up on him in the comics. He's not really more like Blue Beetle. He's just like this robot android that has these powers and stuff. Like he's a human that has his powers and stuff.
Yeah.
That he's like a robot more. And they didn't really show that. Instead, they made him more like Blue Beetle, which I don't like. And that's elements of Iron Man, right? Ironmonger, Iron Man.
Yeah.
You have those elements.
that
there.
was cool because their suits were vastly different, but still the same.
Right. And they could have done it so much better. And unfortunately, if they would have had him as a main villain, I think it definitely would have been a little bit higher in the ratings there.
Yeah.
All right, next up, we got to talk about the other part of the family being Dad, Mom, and Nana. What do we think?
Dad,
Great.
great part.
Great.
Mom was pretty good. I don't know what they were trying to do with Nana, man.
I don't understand.
I don't
man.
understand.
Like, what was going through your mind? Okay, we have this Nana. Okay, right now in the first two acts of the movie, she's quiet. She speaks only Spanish.
She's quiet, yeah,
just
she's
there.
unassuming.
She's there. I mean, all this stuff. And then when you get to the third act, she's pulling out this minigun and she's
Yeah.
like telling
like,
about
"Die,
how
you
these tunnels
imperialist,"
and
yeah.
all this stuff and like
Talk about how she's raid castles.
how all
and
this imperial things, and she has this whole backstory
How
that
this
she
whole
was in the
backstory,
wars
she's
and
in this
stuff.
war.
Like, what?
Where is this coming from?
Like, I immediately, when this happened, it went from being a superhero film to feeling more like an SNL parody skit.
Yeah, and it wasn't just for comedy. Like they actually had her just clearing out waves of enemies. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what?
Like she's what, probably 80 something, and
Yeah,
she's
she
doing this?
has to be.
Like, are you kidding me?
Toting a minigun.
Like this, in my opinion, brought the film down so much. And I
Yeah,
looked
this
over at
is
you,
so
like it
dumb.
went down.
We
Like,
looked over, dude, and we were laughing so
we were laughing.
hard, dude.
We weren't laughing at what was going on. We were laughing at how stupid it was.
So I can't imagine like the writers in the writing room. They're like, dude, you know what? Let's make the Nana like a threat.
Let's
What?
make the Nana an assassin.
She's like, there's a lot you
What?
don't know about your Nana. I'm
Are you
like, bro,
kidding?
what?
It doesn't make sense. And the fact that they were there in the final battle was stupid anyway.
It was terrible.
It was
man.
bad. The mom
It was
flying
horrible.
the ship out of the fire. Like,
Yeah.
are
I
you
was
kidding
like,
me?
what?
Like when the dad, they did great. I
Yeah,
think the dad, like
that
the whole
scene hurt.
the relationship with him, and then his death scene was done really,
It was
really
great.
well.
I really
And
appreciate that.
You needed that boost. Like that scene was also particularly well done. But then the fact that you had mom and Nana, and then the rest of the family, like his sister Milagro, and then Rudy and stuff, flying in Bug. In to get Miguel out.
Yeah, like-
get Jaime out didn't make any sense.
Let's storm the lair.
Like it didn't make
What?
sense. Like I think the movie would have been in. Actually, I'll freeze because we got to talk about it in the cons, but we'll get to that. But anyway,
Yeah.
very negative there. In the
Yeah,
mom and
about Nana, like I said, the dad was great, and the mom, like she was good, but I don't think she had a lot of time either.
No, she did not. But you know, all right. So now we got to get to the pros. The pros here, Nathan. You want to start us out?
Yeah. Let me start us out. The first pro, and I think this is what the movie does best, but it just does a really good job with the whole family aspect. You know, I feel like it's a realistic portrayal of a family, you know, going through a hard time, being there for each other. I think a lot of people obviously resonate with that, and due to that, there's some really emotional moments, like we said before, when the father passes away. It really hurts because a lot of the film's focus, for better for worse, is based on this family. But I really think they did a good job of it.
Yeah. I agree. I have that as a pro as well. I think the family aspect's cool, but I think it was overdone in the end. That's what hurt
like
it.
too much screen time.
Hurted it. That's what hurt it.
Take him out of the third act, and it
yeah.
would have been a lot more.
A lot better.
A lot better, yeah.
But my first pro is just the aesthetic of the movie, the vibes of the movie, like
Yeah.
the color use, the
neon,
Blue Beetle,
blue, purple.
all of those things. The use of flashbacking and going all this stuff, and the music plays with the aesthetic as well. The score was great,
Yeah.
and all of those elements, it just was visually pleasing to me, and I really enjoyed that. I was like, okay, I vibe with this look. I just didn't vibe with the plot, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Another thing I think the movie did pretty well at was its action scenes.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
the CGI held up really well. I thought the choreography was pretty good, especially when you had like Blue Beetle pulling out swords and stuff.
Yeah,
I thought
that was cool.
The fight choreography was really good. So
Yeah.
that's a pro.
I had the CGI as well as a pro. I think the CGI, there's a few instances where it wasn't as good, but for the majority of the movie, it was solid. Like it didn't feel like it was fake. It felt real. So I enjoyed that. And I think the CGI was well done. But another pro I have is the comedy actually of this movie. The comedy played well. Not the Nana stuff.
Yeah.
But
When it's
and that was very
realistic,
brief.
yeah.
But the Rudy and all of that comedy actually was really done well in this movie, and I liked it.
Yeah, I also had the CGI as a pro. So my last one, I just have George Lopez because I do think he's a
The goat.
standout. I mean, I heard he wore like a rat tail for like 6-9 months, something like that, in preparation for this movie.
Yeah.
So shout out George Lopez. You
Love
were
you,
great
guy.
in this movie.
You were great in this movie, which is crazy. And I haven't seen him in a while.
I haven't seen him either, dude.
Like, he was used to be like, he was in like the early 2000s King, man. He was in a lot of stuff, but now
Yeah.
he's not.
He's just kinda chilling.
Yep. All right. So my pro I have in the next one I have is the first act of the movie. I think the first act was actually pretty solid. The
Yeah.
whole getting back and home and getting with the family and then getting the powers and all that
Yeah.
stuff. I thought
Wanted
that
to
was well
provide
done.
for his family with a job.
Right. I thought all of that was really well executed and done. And then with that, the character of Blue Beetle himself, Jaime Reyes, I think was really, really done well in this movie. And that's my last pro.
All right.
All right. Con time.
Cons. You want me to start? You just started.
Whichever.
I'll go. Cons. I think the biggest con man of the movie is just that it's pretty boring. Like, to be honest, it was kind of hard just to keep attention just because, I mean, I had a good time watching it because I felt like it was bad, but it's just boring. Like we said before, there's nothing really new, original, or creative in the movie. Like it rips off from every other superhero movie.
true.
Every single superhero trope is the same. You see, villain, unlikely hero beats villain in the end, gets with the girl, and then I don't know, dude. It just I feel like I've watched this movie 100
Oh,
times
yeah.
before, and it's not something I wanted to watch again. So it was just uninteresting because I'd seen it before.
Yeah, and I touched on this earlier, but my biggest con, and I think the biggest con of this movie, in my opinion, is the villain. I mean, if you don't have a good villain, your movie's is a good
Yeah,
failure.
it's gonna be pretty bad.
It's and the fact that the villain was not in any way, shape, or form compelling really negatively affected this movie for the worse, and that's really unfortunate.
I completely agree. I had villain as my second con. As my third, I think the dialogue of this movie was terrible. I think the dialogue was absolutely terrible. It felt real, like within the family, but outside of that, especially with the villain, right? Korg, whatever her face was, her dialogue was terrible.
So
and then the other
Yeah.
villain, like, where do you think you're going? Or it's like the type of movie when like there's a bad guy behind him and it's say, he's right behind me, isn't he? Or something like that. Like the dialogue feels like it was written by like. It's like 13-year-olds who had just watched some real basic stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, I have the dialogue as a con too, but I wouldn't say like the dialogue is bad, but it's bad because we've heard it so many times.
Yeah.
They reuse so many different dialogues that we've already heard that's not been self-written. Like they were writing this and they're like, oh, this is the stereotypical conversation between a villain and a hero.
Yeah.
And that's what
it's
they
like,
did.
we don't want that, man.
No,
we want
different.
cool
We want
ideas.
new, We want actual conversation, but they did not execute that. So I had that as a con as well. My next con, though, is the third act, man. The third act was horrible. And I would really genuinely say it's one of the worst third acts I've ever seen. It was
horrendous.
bad. The third act of the movie, and the reason the third act of the movie was so bad is because the family was involved in the final battle.
I know.
Like,
What?
If the family wasn't even there, if it was just George Lopez and Jenny finding the bug, that would have been so much better.
Yeah.
If the sister, the nana, and the mom weren't even involved, and they shouldn't have been because their sister and nana and a mom, they should have been like off in a home
Yeah,
somewhere.
they should not be risking their lives.
No,
you
not
know?
at all. Like I understand wanting to get Jaime back, but like the whole stupid nana plot was awful. The mom, fighting and all this stuff, and the sister fighting with the things. Was,
fighting these like armored agents with automatic
With no experience.
assault rifles.
with no experience.
No experience,
I mean,
just punching.
Except for the nana, apparently has plethora of experience.
Dude, yeah,
But
she just
still,
80 toting this machine gun.
it didn't make sense, and it was just horrible. And then the whole thing with the Blue Beetle thing, it felt very like the scene from the ending felt very G.I. Joe, the original G.I. Joe movie, the live action movie. It was the same thing that happened in G.I. Joe. That whole plot with him getting captured and then having to go into this secret facility and getting him out and all this stuff. It's the same thing that happened in G.I. Joe. And even though G.I. Joe is not a very good movie, it still did it better than this.
Yeah.
And it was just so unfortunate to see like the family being involved and then having to get him out and then him fighting. And it really cheapened him, in my opinion,
Yeah, it
as a
did.
character, because it's like he can't solve his own battles without his family.
Exactly. He has to have his nana come and save him.
Yeah, I mean-
apparently.
It was just ridiculous. That's a con.
Yeah, listen, man. And that was honestly my last con, too. Like
Yeah.
you said, it is completely unrealistic.
Yep.
Like, yes, we can get behind the idea that there's this alien symbiote that gives this man powers. We can get behind that. But
Yep.
when you're talking about a sister, a mom, like a grandma, dude, in this fight, man, when the bug is just like farting on soldiers and it's knocking them out, it's just
Bug.
like, it's just unrealistic.
It was so stupid.
You know, and like,
I completely
and
agree.
and the final battle, like, it isn't bad at all between Blue Beetle and
Oh, no.
and,
It's
you know,
actually a
and
good
what's his
fight.
face, yeah,
And it just wasn't, everything building up to it was not good.
exactly. And the way it concluded with him killing his boss and sacrificing himself, I thought was really really cool and a good ending.
It could have worked well.
But man, it was unrealistic, and it really all the good things it had going, like you said in the first couple acts, were just completely ruined.
Yep.
In the third act, so like I said, that was also my last one I had.
Yep. And my final con here is that it felt like, and we've already said this, it felt like a movie we've seen before in different fonts. I mean, we listed Amazing Spider-Man, we listed Ant-Man, we listed Venom, we listed Iron Man,
Shazam, the whole
G.I.
family
Joe,
aspect.
we listed, and then there's Spider-Man Homecoming elements,
Yeah.
the voice in the head, using
Marvels.
the powers, the Marvel, Captain Marvel, all this stuff. Like, there's so many different tropes that we've seen a million times before. And I'm like,
Yeah.
just come up with original idea. Like,
I know.
Blue Beetle is an original character. He's a cool character. Use that better. Like, do
Yeah.
different,
It really reminds me, what is? Oh, dude, I just lost it. It just, it honestly kind of feels like in a Morbius, in just a sense that it feels like the director was trying to make the most safe yet boring movie possible, and yet they're both gonna flop. Like with Morbius, it was another director who had never really done a superhero movie.
Yeah.
All the dialogue was bad, the pacing was terrible, and it just doesn't add up. Like, we don't want to see that. We grew up like early 2000s had a lot of that stuff. You know,
Yeah,
like
right.
we don't want that anymore. I just don't understand why it's so hard to like just
Make something unique.
make something different.
Right. I completely agree.
You know, so
Yep. All right, let's get to the end credit scene really quickly here. So the end credit scene. So I actually thought this end credit scene was not bad. I thought it was actually okay. It's interesting. It's like, okay, what's going on there? And that being that it revealed that Ted Cord, who's the original Blue Beetle, the father of Jenny Cord, is still alive. And it showed him in his Blue Beetle cave and all this stuff and things like that. I think that's not bad. Like Ted Cord's an interesting character.
Yeah.
He's the comics. He's the original Blue Beetle. And I don't think they're going to do Blue Beetle 2, but they could. I don't know. But if they did,
it has to not be a flop.
it can't. Yeah, it has.
But
to.
it is gonna
It's
be
gonna
the
a
flop.
But we'll see how it goes. James Gunn did say no matter what happens, that we'll still use Jaime in the future, but probably not in his
Really?
own capacity. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But I didn't think it was a bad end credit scene because Ted Cord would be cool to see him, cool to explore his character. But
Yeah, that would be cool, but I really don't want a sequel.
I
I
know.
mean, but like I said, it has to do well, and like the numbers are shown. It
Yeah.
made 45 mil worldwide, which is absolutely terrible,
Yeah.
and then has a budget of like 104 million. So it's the lowest for any, I think,
and
DC
that's pretty
movie so
sad.
far.
That's pretty sad.
So I
I'll
guess
just
we'll
wait and
see.
All right, now it's time for the rating out of 10. Ooh,
I feel like I knew this one just like during the third act.
Hmm.
I don't think it's worse than the 4. I think there's too much good stuff with it,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's like nearly a 6. So I'm a settle with a 5.
5 out of 10.
I think on a good day I might give it a 5.5, but
Yeah.
I couldn't see myself getting this one a 6. So I'm gonna go
Yeah.
with 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I completely can vibe with that. And when I was watching the first, like after the first act, the first 2 acts, I was like, okay, it's pretty solid. I wouldn't say it's a fantastic movie, but I would
Yeah.
say like 7 out of 10. Like after the first 2 acts.
Yeah.
And the third act just absolutely destroyed my
It's
hopes and
like
dreams.
what?
It was so bad. And it made me so like sad. So I'm gonna give it a 5.5 out of 10. I think that this movie could have potentially been a lot better, and it could have been that 7 out of 10, but that third act just really brought it down.
Yeah.
If the whole family did not go and fight in the ending,
Yeah, it would've been
I
at
think
least
it
a
could have been a
6,
6,
yeah.
6.5, 7.
It's been
I mean,
realistic, you know.
absolutely.
Make with Jaime fight his
Yeah.
own battles, you know.
But I mean, it's really unfortunate that that's happened. Now, when you factor in, heroes in the moments being name dropped, I
11
think
out
it's
of
more
10.
like a 9, 11,
They were
10.
speaking to us.
Right.
She was saying, "Do you think you really built like Michael and Nathan?
Exactly.
Do you really think you're like that?and he was like,
You're
no, I'm
like
not.
that.
Yeah.
You can't live up to that.
Live up to the hype that is.
Can't. So because of that, we'll give it a 9 out of 9.5 out of 10.
9.5 is pretty
Yeah,
fair.
yeah. But what was that? What is our average here? Like
It'd be
5.3?
5.25.
5.25.
Yeah.
Math.
I
So
know,
5.25
math.
out of 10 for Blue Beetle.
Yeah. All right, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by giving us a review and a download. Our podcast, Here's in the Moment, is available on all major podcast platforms, so feel free to go check out our episodes. We got a ton of weekly news, season recaps, movie reviews, anything y'all want. I promise y'all, we got it. If you want to stay up to date with our socials, check out the Instagram at Here's in the Moment. And if y'all want to support the show, we have a little support. The show link at the bottom of our episodes.
Yes, we just want to thank y'all for listening. And as always, we love you 3000.